Well, hello there, and hello there. How we looking? Hi again, everybody. We welcome you to Dialed In. I'm Tom Brenneman, joined from Bloomington, Indiana, by Luke Brenneman. Luke, how's everything there in IU land?
It's good. I think this is the last week of winter weather, and it should be. I mean, we're pushing March 6th right now. We need to get out of the 30s and low 40s here. Another chilly one today, but I think it's trending upwards. And hey, my mom's coming this weekend, so you're going to be flying solo, and we're going to be hanging out here in Bloomington.
All right. Well, you guys have a good time. I wish I was going to be with you. Casey McCollister, our producer and contributor as well. Casey, how's everything looking?
We're looking good, Tom. We're looking great. Just got done with Off the Bench, which was just a basic funeral for the Bearcats, and maybe Elliott
Yeah.
getting a lot of things off his chest. But it's another great week, and lots to talk about.
Yes, lots to talk about indeed. Our show is presented by UDF and Encore Technologies. We come your way every Thursday at high noon Eastern Time. You can find us on YouTube/Chatterbox Sports page. You can download us anytime, anywhere. Just search Dialed In with Tom Brenneman, and you'll be dialed in. Even though we are far, far away, as the old Star Wars movies used to say, from the start of another football season, the Bengals continue to dominate the local sports headlines. What a week, right? First they cut guard Alex Cappa, who, by the way, if you missed it, late last night signed a 2-year deal with the Las Vegas Raiders. Then the team, we know about the franchise tag on T. Higgins. The team has time to sign him to a long-term deal, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Now, Maxx Crosby signs a monster extension with the Raiders, and you're thinking, well, who cares about Maxx Crosby? Trey Hendrickson cares about Maxx Crosby. Hendrickson has 35 sacks over the last 2 seasons. Crosby has 22, and Crosby's missed a number of games injured. Hendrickson makes $17 million a year on the final year of his contract. Crosby's new deal is for an average. Now, they gave him $90 million as a signing bonus, but it's an average right around $33 million a year. And then just yesterday, fan favorite Sam Hubbard called it a career, announcing his retirement. The Moeller High and Ohio State alum played 7 seasons in Bengal stripes and, of course, will forever be remembered with that 98-yard fumble return in the playoffs against Baltimore 3 years ago. Congratulations to Sam Hubbard. Good player, good career, and an even better guy. College basketball, Casey just mentioned it. We're down to the final weekend of the regular season. And on the local front, X is going up, and the UC Bearcats have hit rock bottom. The X-Men go to 20-10 on the year after drubbing Butler last night, 91-78. Zach Freemantle had 24 points. The Bearcats blew a 7-point lead in the final 14 minutes in a loss to Kansas State. Believe it or not, Kansas State does not score a field goal in the final 4 minutes of the game. Not one. And still won the game. Will X make the NCAA tournament? Will UC make a run for the tournament? We will discuss those two and look at 2 other local teams on the bubble, Ohio State and Indiana. And by the way, Luke, you will be there Saturday when those 2 teams collide with your mom in Bloomington. As for the Reds, Hunter Green, very sharp yesterday against the Rangers. 4 innings, 2 hit, shutout baseball, struck out 6, walked only 1. The Reds have lost 3 straight. They'll host the Giants later this afternoon at 3:05 Eastern Time in Goodyear, Arizona. All right, fellas, let's start with the Bengals. Luke, any thoughts about Sam Hubbard? Let's start with him, since this is, the end of the line for him, and what he's meant to you as being a Cincinnati Bengal.
That's what areas, cities, teams, franchises, to be frank, are all about in the smaller level, and especially Cincinnati as a core collective fan base where we have people who tune into this show. And the second we start talking about the Bengals in the first week of March, we go over north of 100 viewers. People care about the Bengals, and people care because we have guys like Sam Hubbard on the team. a lacrosse player, a moeller kid, and he goes and puts on a ton of weight after Urban Meyer sees him play, turns into a hell of a player at Ohio State, which obviously there's a ton of Ohio State support in the greater Cincinnati area. And then you make one of, if not the biggest defensive play in the Bengals postseason the last 2 decades. I mean, that's going to be an era that we remember forever, and that's what makes these conversations that we have on this show so important. Why does it matter so much compared to other years? We never used to talk about franchise tags and long-term extensions. It's because this is a time that we're going to look back on when I'm a 40-year-old old man in my professional career and say, wow, the Bengals had studs. And Sam wasn't necessarily a stud, and he was injury-plagued and beat up, and it's really unfortunate that he can't move on and go excel with another team because he was going to get cut regardless. But he made plays and was a face of the community and did a ton of good work with his charity. So if you're dogging Sam Hubbard yesterday and saying, thank God the Bengals freed up a couple million, you're a loser of a fan.
Yep.
Let him have his day. Let him have his week. And congratulations on retirement to the Cincinnati kid.
And by the way, Julie chimes in, and she beat me to the punch when you said when I'm 40 years old and old. I mean, are you kidding? 40 years old? Old? I boat raced that 21 years ago and still rolling right along.
I'm just saying, in general, of being a Bengals fan, it's more 3 to 5 years on and then 10 to 20 off. So I'm almost 20 right now. I think when this whole Burrow era's said and done, I'm definitely pushing 50. So hopefully we have a next Sam Hubbard company and the rest of the superstars. So congratulations to Hubbard.
Yeah, I mean, his whole story is really an amazing story. You mentioned it, Luke. And I remember, Urban Meyer telling me the story about Sam Hubbard. And Urban had gone to Moeller to look at a different player. And so he had gotten to Moeller early on a recruiting visit. I can't remember what player it was. He was trying to close a deal. And a bunch of the athletes were playing dodgeball in the Moeller gym. And Urban's sitting in the gym, and there are these kids out there running around. And he's watching this guy, and he leans over to the coach at Moeller and says, "Who's that guy?" And he said, "Well, that's Sam Hubbard." He said, "Well, what's his story?" He said, "Well, he's an all-state safety, but he's a better lacrosse player." He says, "Really?" So he's sitting there watching this guy move around and blah, blah, blah. Well, turns out Urban starts keeping an eye on Hubbard. He plays as a safety at Moeller his senior year. And then Urban recruits him. He comes to Ohio State. He gets redshirted his freshman year. I was doing an Ohio State game, and we're meeting with Coach Meyer. And somehow, some way, Hubbard's name comes up. And I said, "Hey, by the way, Cincinnati guy, Moeller guy, blah, blah, blah." He says, "Yeah." I said, "Well, where's his future? What position do you want him to play?" He said, "I've never recruited a player in my life, not one." He said, "where I had more fighting taking place between the offensive side of the ball, the coaches, and the defensive side of the ball." He says, "The offensive coaches want to make this guy a tight end. He's an incredible athlete." He said, "The defensive coaches are all arguing that he should be a safety, a linebacker, or a defensive lineman." And I look at him and I said, "Defensive lineman?" I said, "What's he weigh, about 215, 220? He says, "Yep." He says, "But he's going to redshirt this year, and by the time he would show up for fall practice, we think we could get him up to about 260, 265. The next year he's about 270, 275, and then he plays his junior year about 280. And that's exactly what happened. He wound up being an all Big Ten, was drafted by the Bengals, had an outstanding career, and did so much in the community. He still does, and I'm sure he will continue to do so because he'll continue to live here. So good for him. All right. Now, there was a report yesterday that came out that centered on the big three that we've been talking about ad nauseum. Hendrickson, Chase, Higgins, right? And this report, can't remember the reporter's name, so forgive me, but had said that he had inside knowledge of the Bengals situation and that they were nowhere close on any contract negotiation with any of the three. Okay, now we know Hendrickson has a year left on his deal. He's making roughly half what Maxx Crosby just signed for yesterday. We know Chase, they have team control on him, okay? And we know that Higgins, they franchise tagged him. Furthermore, in this report, it was mentioned that the Bengals don't want to trade Hendrickson, but they are now all of a sudden open to listening to what other people might offer them for Hendrickson. My question to you is, Casey, and I'll start with you and then Luke, get to you. Let's focus on Hendrickson for a second. The news couldn't have been good. If you were hoping to sign him as to an extension at his age at 30 years old, Crosby's a couple of years younger. The contract that Crosby got, the Bengals are never given anywhere near that contract to Trey Hendrickson in a million years. Right, Casey? No chance.
Yeah, there's no chance. I mean, even if they did get to the number per year, 35, whatever he wants in the higher mid-30s, there's no way they were going to give him $90 million plus guaranteed. I mean, that contract extension that he signed, that Crosby signed, most of it was guaranteed. And that's just something the Bengals do not dip their toes in. And with an aging player like Trey, it's just, that was never going to happen. So in my mind, and the guys in the office, they all feel differently about this. In my mind, I think that ship has sailed, honestly. I think that they're not going to get all three done. I think there was a possibility of it getting done before this, but now that you kind of have the market reset for edge rushers, like Maxx Crosby is a great edge rusher. I think he's a top 10 edge rusher, but he's not Myles Garrett, right? Like Trey Hendrickson is closer to Maxx Crosby than he is Myles Garrett. And you're going to argue that, you know, he deserves less than Crosby. I don't think that's a logical argument. So I'm in a spot now where I think the Bengals made a mistake taking too long, dragging their feet on these contracts, and it's burnt them. So how do I feel about the situation? Not great at the moment. But the reports that we've been hearing about them not being close, I think that's just what the Bengals do. And they will try to get their best deal that they possibly can. And they'll push it up to the final moment before signing a deal. I just hope that their final moment isn't the start of free agency, because if that's the case, they're making a huge mistake. They need to get these contracts done before free agency starts. At least get Chase done, because you got T. Higgins figured out. At least you got the franchise tag on him. He's already accounted for in the books. You give him an extension, his cap number actually goes down. So you got to figure out Chase right now, and then figure out the rest later.
I got to tell you, though, and we brought this up a couple of weeks ago, and look, there's plenty of time. And I listen, I'm not going to be one of those guys who is in the overreaction booth, okay? I don't get wound up about it. I really don't. Having said that, knowing that this situation was on the horizon, and to hear, if this story is true, the report that the Bengals are not close on any of these contracts, I'm not surprised at all that they're not close on Hendrickson, because they're just not going to pay him, like Casey just said. It's all about timing in life, and it's all about your age. He has 1 year on a deal. He's 30. They're not going to give him that kind of money for a long-term contract. The Higgins thing we talked about ad nauseum. But the Chase thing, Luke, you know, it should have been done before training camp last year. And to think that here we are in March, and training camp doesn't start till July. But to think that we're sitting here in March, and if the story's true, that they're nowhere close, I find that disheartening.
100% agree. And I heard it the other day. Guys, if this was the Philadelphia Eagles, the contracts would have been done before these guys got Twitter fingers and started posting about it on social media. To be quite honest, the Bengals are right now riding the roller coaster, and there's only a couple more humps left of this whole thing, where when it's all said and done, not just Bengals fans are going to look at this, but the whole NFL is going to look at this and finally accept the fact, yes, you guys had a good run. You made a couple AFC championships. You won one. You went to the Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, the Bengals are starting to look like losers. Losers. Just dragging out talent that, yes, give them credit, the Bengals drafted. Ever in this chat, you can say what you want, guys. I was begging for Penei Sewell. There was a lot of you guys. Jamar Chase was a heck of a draft pick. And he's going to go break all kinds of records, win the Triple Crown. Before the Triple Crown season, wanted to be paid, asked to be paid, was going to be paid a whole lot less than he is now. And they still haven't paid the guy. So it's just at the point where it's like, oh, it's so easy to be a Bengals fan and to be from Cincinnati and love this team and love everything about them. But then you take a step back from the fandom and you have more of a critical approach. And it's quite disheartening when it's like we can't even pay one of the big three that this offseason, it was just glaring, full highlighter, bright yellow. These three guys want to be paid. You should have said, well, we're going to pay this one and we're going to pay him now. And if you could have just paid Jamar Chase when your franchise, all league, all world talent wide receiver wanted to be paid, then you would have saved money in the long run doing it. So I'm just kind of over this whole thing. We're going to talk about it for week after week at this point. And
Yeah.
for these guys to be posting on social media about each other wanting a bag or deserving a bag, it just really does show the divide between the front office and the Bengals. I mean, take the Super Bowl champions. You're looking at their entire front office from ownership to general manager to football operations hugging each other on the sideline because they went and paid Saquon Barkley, because they went and paid their guys to stay. And you know what? Darius Slay, heck of a player, but he took his Super Bowl ring and he's going to walk out of Philadelphia with that. And sometimes you have to make hard decisions to cut guys, and sometimes you got to make risky and gutsy decisions to pay guys. And the Bengals, it doesn't seem that risky or that gutsy to at least have one of them signed by now.
Well, I mean, I hate to say it, but, fellas, neither one of you, and this isn't a slam in any form or fashion, don't take it that way. Neither one of you are old enough to understand this is standard operating procedure. We had a little breakthrough the year before the Super Bowl trip, and then the year after the Super Bowl trip, where in back-to-back seasons they went out and spent a lot of money on the defense, and then in the following year they went out and spent a lot of money on the offense. But outside of those 2 years, what we're looking at right now, and the reason the national media beats up the Bengals so badly, is because this is standard operating procedure. It's been going on forever. I mean, you could just write down name after name. For the names that come to mind for you guys, because it's been in recent years, are the Jesse Bates of the world, right? Well, I mean, you're old enough to remember Kevin Zeitler. I mean, this guy has had a great career. Zeitler could be a Hall of Famer, maybe. He is still going strong. And he's been gone for the Bengals for 7-8 years now. How did they not keep this guy? When their offensive line, except for the last year he was here, back in 13, 14, 15, somewhere in that range, that's the last time they were really any good. And you go back to the days of the Max Montoyas. I mean, people forget they let Anthony Munoz walk out the door and sign in the USFL. They let Collinswood. I mean, come on. This is standard operating procedure. I understand they have a business to run, and they've got to figure out the money part of it like every other team in the National Football League does. But the Chase thing to me is just, it is. I'm not worked up about the Higgins thing because I understand why they would tag him. I really do. Because I don't think you're going to be able to pay both guys for the long haul. I don't think it makes sense if you want to be any good. You can find somebody to take his spot. Hendrickson has been by far the best player on defense since the day he signed here. And that will go down as one of the best, if not the best, free agent signing in the history of the franchise. But for them not to have, again, if the story's true, and you got to believe it's true because we don't hear anything about it, and it's been going on since last June when they knew that this thing was going to get closer and closer and closer and closer. To not be anywhere close on Chase, to me, it It's constant noise around this franchise that doesn't need to be here. Great point by Optimistic John. Although, John, I don't know why you think I can pick up the phone and call Mike Brown or Katie Brown. They're not taking my calls. But you made a great point, Andrew Whitworth. There's another one. Andrew Whitworth. I mean, are you kidding me? You're letting that guy walk out the door, Zeitler walk out the door, and anybody is surprised that we're in the situation that we're in right now? I'm not surprised a bit. Luke, you were going to have a couple of buy or sells here today on the Bengals. You want to do those now, or no? Those were for college basketball. I got a quick buy or sell on you guys right now, real quick, just spur of the moment. Buy or sell? Trey Hendrickson will be traded from the Bengals. Casey?
Ooh, I'm buying. I'm buying that all the way. I think that they're going to get a trade done here in the near future because it just doesn't make sense to pay him that much in guarantees. It doesn't make sense to pay him that much money per year. It just doesn't make sense. So I'm buying it. Luke, what about you?
Okay. All right. I am. Go ahead, Luke.
Dad, you go.
No, go ahead, buddy. Go ahead.
I look at this from this whole thing that I've said every time we have this topic. There had to have been a vision. You don't, during the season, you are working 7 days a week. These people are working into March, into the new year when you're not playing football. There had to be some sort, and still has to be some sort of vision, whether it's on a clipboard or a whiteboard or a freaking Google document that this team had with what they're going to do in the offseason, and they haven't done anything. So I still want to think that vision is still somewhat alive, where it's like, okay, we're going to let Hubbard go. We're going to let a couple other guys go. There goes Alex Cappa. But when are you going to make that first aggressive move to keep someone in Cincinnati or bring someone to Cincinnati? I don't know if that's going to be Trey Hendrickson. To be quite honest, I think one of the receivers, I know it's not the question, something's going to happen with one of them before it happens with Trey, because I think they're just going to sit on their hands with Trey at this point. The Maxx Crosby deal is egregious. Don't get me wrong, I read the headline. Is this correct? The highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history, guys?
Yeah.
For a guy who didn't even sniff Trey Hendrickson production. Yes, he is all-world, all-athletic, and Maxx Crosby's a heck of a player. But let's not get out of our shoes here. We have guys like that on the offensive end. So who do you want to pay that money to? Because the Jamar money is now that high, and the Hendrickson money is certainly right there just on the defensive end. So for the sake of the buy or sell, right now, even though I don't love it, but I'm just going to sell it because I just think they're just going to wait this one out, and then it's going to be up to Trey, and then the Bengals are going to expose themselves once again, and then just another free agent market that they let get inflated. And on this one, it's kind of weird with Trey specifically because he was a great sign, had a great year, and now they don't really know what to do with him now that he's worth $1 billion.
Well, look, I'm selling this too. I think that look, there and there's a track record for this with the Bengals, and on this one, I don't blame him. I really don't. Due to his age, I would not give him a long-term deal. I would listen to offers. If I got blown away, I certainly would pull the trigger if it was something really, really good, but it probably won't be. And you've got him under contract. Now, if you just want to, I think they let this thing ride out. If he wants to play on the 16, 17 million the final year of this contract, then God bless him. And he'll be a motivated player to go play his tail off so he can get a monster contract from somebody else. There's no way he's sitting down. Not in the last year of a deal. No way. So I'm going to let him ride it out. Like I said, I will listen to Trey talk. Oh, I don't think so. No, I don't think that anything.
Trey Hendrickson would not play.
Yes, he would, because here's the reason why. A younger player might not play. But this is the last chance for Hendrickson to get a big deal. And the league is littered, going back to the Le'Veon Bells of the world. The biggest mistake a player can make is sitting out because it's a year away from the game. They don't know what they're paying for after you've sat out for a year, and especially when you're 31 years old. There's no way Hendrickson is sitting out. He will play under the last year of the deal. Now, he might sit out for the first 4 games or however long that he can do it and get away with it. That might happen. But he's not going to sit out for the year if he has any hopes of getting that big contract one more time.
I think we have to appreciate just how good Trey Hendrickson was last year, and we still have a little bit of a sore throat in the sense of that defense was miserable to watch every single week in and week out. Trey Hendrickson was the Jamar Chase equivalent of the NFL last season, and he did it when it mattered too. In that Pittsburgh game, he single-handedly stopped the drive that would have put a machete through all of our guts. And it ended up not happening, and we held on and won a game that ended up not meaning anything because we still didn't get in the playoffs. But this is a guy, like, if you're going to say this is his last chance to do something special, what the heck did he do last year? Because to me, Trey Hendrickson deserves a Brinks truck to be pulled up to his house, let him drive the thing and go wherever he wants to go after the season he had. I refuse to believe that Trey Hendrickson would play for the Cincinnati Bengals and play hard and risk an injury after what he did from a production standpoint for a team that gave him nothing to work with and no help and ended up running away with the lead in the NFL sack. This guy deserves a bag, and if Cincinnati's not going to give it to him at this point, even as a Cincinnati fan, I'm going to turn into a critic. Go get it somewhere else, Trey, because you deserve it.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. Enough of the Bengals. Let's move on now to college basketball. UC last night, and we've talked about, we were already starting to throw the dirt on the gravesite, when they had that losing streak before they, won a couple games against some bad teams. And they did compete against Houston over the weekend. Last night was just brutal. Brutal. And, Wes Miller melts down again in the post-game press conference. I'm at the point where, fellas, look, the only way they're going to get in the NCAA tournament is to win the Big 12. I take that back. I think if they got to the finals of the Big 12 tournament, I think that they would get in if they got to the final. But that's the only way. Because along the way, they would have to beat two really, really good teams. They'd have to beat an Iowa State, Houston. Yeah, they would. If they get to the championship game, they'll get in. But that's not happening. And I hope it happens, but it's not happening. When you take the 10,000-foot view on this thing, one of two things happened here. Either one, everybody in America overrated this roster. And when I say everybody, they were ranked in the top 17 teams, top 15 teams in the country in the preseason polls. So either everybody overrated this roster, or this roster is made up of a bunch of guys along with a head coach that are just not ready for prime time. Which is closer to the truth?
Well, they can't score. And that team, the thing that is a testament to them just not being a very good basketball team, and this show more than others, and especially myself, because I still say you got to keep Wes Miller and ride out this era and hope that he can figure it out and save his butt. But it's the same product every single game, whether it's a big game or a little game. They don't score, especially in the first half. If you score below 30 points in this day and age of college basketball, where there are guys that can jump from the three-point line to the rim, there are so many different ways to score. They shoot the ball at the highest level than they ever have. They play the game so fast. It's just bad quality, and that starts at the coaching level. I understand that their offensive sets don't free anyone up, but the inconsistencies with who's playing, who's not playing. You've been on the bench the whole game, but now you're going to come in and nail 3 straight threes to get us back into the West Virginia game, and Dan Skillings. The team is a dumpster fire, and it actually is kind of funny if you look at it from a season's perspective of how many times you can give up on a team throughout the course of the season, especially with the teams around our area, and they still actually have a chance to make the tournament. Indiana lost 6 in a row. They went over a month without winning a game at Assembly Hall. They're projected in the NCAA tournament. They still haven't really beat a marquee team outside of Purdue. No, they got the Michigan State win, but Xavier. People gave up on Xavier the second they lost the crosstown shootout and said, this team's just not very good. It's Cincinnati's year. And all of a sudden, if UC could have handled Kansas State at home and scored more than 60 points last night, then to be quite honest, they would only need 1 or 2 wins in the Big 12 tournament, along with the win against Oklahoma State on Saturday, to potentially have a chance at making the big dance. So it's kind of hard to miss the NCAA tournament when you recruit the way they do, and the bubble is inflated as it is right now. It's a bad product on the floor at Fifth Third.
It's really bad. It is really bad. So you jump over to Xavier. You brought them up. Now, it's interesting. I want to put something up, and we'll go back to this a couple times. Casey, let's put up Joe Lunardi's most recent bracketology. And I'm going to compare and contrast that a little bit just for the sake of giving people an idea of really where Xavier sits in all this. Now, again, this is the most updated Joe Lunardi bracketology. You see the last 4 byes. Ohio State is in there, even with 13 losses. And then the last 4 in, you have your school, Lukey, Indiana, along with the Xavier Musketeers. Now, the first 4 out, you have North Carolina in that group, Nebraska. Next 4 out, Cincinnati, Wake Forest, Colorado State, SMU. Okay, the only reason I'm bringing this graphic up is because if you look at the latest Jerry Palm rankings, okay, where they are, he is saying who the last ones in and aren't. Now, to compare and contrast, he has Indiana already in as a 10 seed, as a 10, not an 11. Where they'd have to be in the first 4 up in Dayton. He's got them in. His last 4 in include Oklahoma, San Diego State, Boise State, Ohio State. His first 4 out have Xavier, North Carolina, Nebraska, Wake Forest. Now, if North Carolina, who has a net of 38, okay, 38, just listen to these numbers a little bit. If North Carolina beats Duke on Saturday, they're in. I mean, just mark it down. It's North Carolina, and the committee's going to put them in. And they'll have justification because their net would probably jump to like 30 or 31 at that point if they're able to beat Duke. They sit at 38 now. Ohio State's net ranking, and remember, the net rankings is what the NCAA committee uses to put teams in. Their net rankings. It's a big part of it, okay? All that's tied in with quad 1, quad 2, quad 3, quad 4. Ohio State's net, even though they're 17 and 13, their net is 36. It's better than North Carolina's. And it is 11 spots better than Xavier. Xavier is at 47 in the net. So Lunardi has them in. Jerry Palm has them out. I'm not sure when I look at Xavier's, the teams they've beaten this year, I think they are. I mean, if there is ever a team that sits on that bubble right now, it is the Xavier Musketeers. You agree, Luke?
I don't. And we talked about this pre-show. I think that X deserves to be in. You look at their schedule.
I didn't say deserves to be in. I didn't say that. I said will be in. I think that's what I'm saying. I think argument for a lot of teams. It should be in.
I think X has to be in. I mean, we're talking about North Carolina right now. We're talking about Indiana right now. Xavier, they've defended their home floor. They've beaten teams like UConn. They dominated Creighton. They're playing the best basketball of the season right now. They're going to end the season on what? A 6 or 7 game win streak if they can beat Providence at home? Come on, guys. If they win 1 game in the Big East tournament, they have to make the tournament. Compared to some of these teams that we were somehow still talking about going into this Monday week of games, Cincinnati, Villanova. Geez, you guys really showed up. And what are we now? The 3rd or 4th year of the Kyle Neptune era. That's a stinker. Put that right alongside Cincinnati with another disappointment. But nonetheless, I mean, we're talking about non-Power 5 school teams right on this bubble, and I get that the Mountain West isn't terrible at basketball this season. They're going to have a couple bids, but it's kind of going to work itself out, and you really deserve to play your way in or not. So look at some of the matchups we have coming up. Indiana, Ohio State on Saturday. To me, I look at that game. Whoever wins that game is in the NCAA tournament. Right then. It would mean a lot more for Ohio State to get a road win for the sake of what the quadrant 1 and quadrant 2 stacks up, where it's a top 75 team in the net compared to a top 35, depending on a road or home situation. But it's all going to come down to next week and starting on Wednesday when these Power 5 conferences start their conference tournament. Who on the bubble or who in the next four out is going to win 3 in a row and pick up a win against a top 10 team in the country and stun them and somehow play their way in? Because the bubble seems really big right now. And then the second, say, a random NC State in the ACC last year wins the whole thing, that's a full spot that they steal. Because the projected winner of the ACC, Duke, is already in. The second, runner-up, Clemson, is already in. Same with their whole top 3. So there's going to be bids stolen in these conference tournaments, and the bubble once starts really big and starts dwindling down. So right now, for all of the teams in the first 4 in and first 4 out, they got to win out and at least win 1 to 2 games to really at least confidently say we deserve a spot in the NCAA tournament. And I think Xavier's not one of them. I think Xavier, if they can win out the rest of the regular season, they belong in the NCAA tournament.
Well, they got one game left in the season. That's against Providence. That's a layup. But hey, look, you say good wins against Creighton and UConn. Creighton's 37 in the net. UConn's 34 in the net. If you look at quad 1 wins this year, Xavier is 1-9. 1-9. Ohio State is 6-10. Ohio State's lost 3 more games than Xavier has lost this year. Their out-of-conference schedule was so much better than Xavier's. Ohio State ranks up there among the most quad 1 wins in the country. 6 of them. But I think that quad 1 thing, 1-9 in quad 1 games, and look, Cincinnati stinks in those games. A team like Arkansas, they've got 5 quad 1 wins. I mentioned Ohio State has 6. I don't know how good those 2 wins are for Xavier against UConn and Creighton. I don't know.
You're right, but and that's part of the Big East being extremely top heavy this year. But you start playing that game, and it's quite interesting because of how diverse some of these resumes are. You look at an Indiana team; they do not have a quad 2, 3, or 4 loss the entire season, but they're a whopping 4 out of 16, so 4-12 in their quad 1 opportunities. So, if you play in the Big Ten, you're going to get plentiful quad 1 opportunities. If you only win 4 of 16 of those games, are you like, okay, that's a tournament team? Or do you look at their resume and say, well, they played in a tough Big Ten this year where there's going to be over 10 teams that make the tournament. They won a huge one on the road at Michigan State. They beat a top 15 Purdue team. So 2 of their 4 quad 1 wins are really solid wins for that team. You're like, okay, they deserve to be in? Or do you look at a team that, for the most part, has just handled business? I mean, X has 8 quad 2 wins. That's quite a few. And then Ohio State, the complete opposite. They have 3 quad 2 losses. You're looking at Pitt. They lost to Pitt. They lost to Indiana. They lost to Northwestern by 21 points at home.
Brutal loss.
And so, somebody like North Carolina has a quad 3 loss. So where is that difference maker there? And we're gonna see it. And unlike other years, the bubble is pretty straightforward, and you can look at head-to-head matchups. This one is going to be a roller coaster of a conference tournament week into the championships on Sunday, and then you parlay that with the selection show. It's going to be nuts. What do they value the most? History tells us it's the quad 1 wins. So that makes me think that Ohio State and Indiana are ahead of Xavier in the committee's eyes. In my opinion, Xavier's played their way in the NCAA tournament.
Oh, Tom, we lose you? We must have lost him.
I guess he's frozen. We had a couple buy or sells that we can jump into. Casey, I can set you up with this one. Buy or sell, we talked about this a second ago. If Cincinnati makes the Big 12 semifinals or finals, I guess you're buying, let's say the finals of the Big 12 tournament, Will they make the NCAA tournament?
Ooh. UC making the finals would be huge because they would definitely stack up some wins there. At that point, this is kind of cheating. I'm going to say it's 50-50. I think it's a toss-up at that point. I don't know if they had done enough to secure a spot or not. But for the sake of the game, I'm going to just say sell. I don't think that they deserve it if they do happen to make it to the finals. People will be all over me for that one. But from what I've seen so far, I just don't know if it's worth the committee's time to put in a team that you don't know what you're getting at that point, because you would have won all those games to get to that point, but you've shown all throughout the season that you're up and down and inconsistent, can't score. I don't know. Wouldn't blame them if they would hold them out. What about you?
I'm just going to buy it for the sake of you start looking at these resumes and teams like Indiana, 4 quad one wins, Ohio State, a couple better than that, Xavier with just 1. And they seem to be at least on the right half of the bubble right now and in the tournament. If you can go on a run in a conference like the Big Ten tournament, like the Big 12 tournament, I'm not necessarily going to say the Big East because of the way it's really top heavy and you're not going to get a quad one win in that first round. Like if Indiana wins their first round game or they play Oregon, like boom, right there. If you can beat a team that you just lost to after losing by 9 and they go on a 10-0 run to end the game, like that's 1 quad one win. Then you get 1 more. Like if you can get 3 quad one wins in a week of games, it's like, whoa. Now we start rewarding a team for playing in a really good conference. So if Cincinnati can win 3 straight quad one wins, by all means, they might not make the tournament, but they're certainly in the conversation for being there because a team like Indiana has 4 quad one wins all season. And some people are saying that they're as high as a 10 seed right now and a safe spot in the tournament. So I think that's the advantage and disadvantages of playing in such a strong conference like the Big 12 that's been really deep year after year now. But I guess time will tell. The show next week is going to be awesome because we're going to be right in the heart of all of these games.
All right, we got Tom back here. You want to rephrase the question?
Dad, we're buying or selling if Cincinnati makes the championship of the Big 12 tournament. I didn't even give my answer. I'm buying it that they make if the Big 12 tournament, they make the NCAA tournament because I think they're going to pick up 3, if not 4, quadrant 1 wins on the road there, depending on if they can win the game.
Yep. I'm with you. I buy that. If they make the tournament finals, they will make the NCAA tournament. No doubt in my mind because their net ranking is still not too bad. In fact, their net ranking, they're still ahead of Xavier, believe it or not. So if they could rip off 3 or 4 of those before they got to the championship game and included in that run would be, wins over an Iowa State or a Houston or somebody like that before you got to you definitely get in. Casey, did you answer the question, I'm assuming?
I did answer it. I sold mine. I just don't know. The team's too inconsistent. So it just didn't make a whole lot of sense. So, anyways, you want to continue on, Luke?
Yeah. This is an interesting one, and I really want the chat's opinion. So you take a North Carolina team that has been a massive disappointment. They were ranked inside the top 10 preseason. A lot of people putting wagers on them to win the NCAA title. And the setup that they have with Hubert Davis and his longevity as a target. They have similar starts to the season, I guess not really similar to Indiana, but 2 hometown head coaches rooted inside of the programs, and Carolina in an embarrassing year of the ACC and a horrible year when it comes to their caliber of play. They extend Hubert Davis just about a month ago, a couple weeks ago. They're like, okay, we're just going to show trust in our fan base so that everyone can shut up and say, this is our guy moving forward. Let's all get on the same team. It's been one bad year. We still might make the tournament, but this is our long-term head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels. I'm not saying that UC would extend Wes Miller, but what type of feelings do we have as Cincinnati Bearcats fans and critics about maybe a move like that with Wes, where they come out and say, Wes Miller is here to stay. He is the head coach of Cincinnati basketball, and everyone needs to shut up about the Fire West trade because it's been as dark in Chapel Hill as it has somehow been in Cincinnati. They lost to Stanford at home, guys. My dad had that game. If he's back, he can chime in on that. But are you
Yeah.
buying or selling that Cincinnati should follow UNC and at least show public faith in Wes Miller moving forward, or is it time to maybe say, "Hey, you are officially on the warm seat, if you will"?
Well, I think at the end of the day, they're going to do it because they have to do it. They're not going to. They're not going to. His money payout is too large. UC can't afford to do it. Most schools wouldn't be able to afford to do it. So they're going to do it because he's not going anywhere. They've got him under contract, so they're going to say he's our guy moving forward. But the pressure on him. If we thought there was pressure on him going into this season, the pressure on him going into next season is going to be through the roof.
Insane. I guess like it's a given that they're going to ride it out, but
Yep.
nonetheless, that's it when it comes to the buy or sells. I think that the biggest thing to watch this weekend as we wrap up college basketball is an ultimate bubble game, and we're getting a lot of them in the Big Ten because that Nebraska-Ohio State game this week went to double overtime. Looked like Ohio State had them up 9. They blow it. Nebraska has Ohio State in double OT. Ohio State comes back and wins the game. I think Indiana-Ohio State is going to be that marquee game to watch, along with a lot of them. But this time of the year, it's more fun to watch the unranked teams battle out the bubble than it is to maybe watch a top 15 matchup because those teams are locked in as top 2, 3, and 4 seeds. Should we go to could be the move, or do you guys have anything else with college hoops?
Yeah, the only thing I would say about that, a lot of those smaller conferences are playing their championship games this weekend. NKU is playing tonight in the quarterfinals of the Horizon League at Cleveland State. Cleveland State's a 2 seed there. NKU, they normally play great this time of the year, so, they have a chance to do that tonight. But there was an incredible, you talk about pressure. Okay, the guy who all of a sudden, McCollum, who's in this big conversation, it was a huge story in the USA Today, that this is a guy that Indiana should go after as their head coach. He won 4 national championships. This is a Drake head coach. He won 4 national championships at a lower level already. He's won over 81% of his games. And the article said they ought to do what they did with Signetti. Go get a guy who is a proven winner and bring him in. Forget the big name. Bring in a guy that has been a winner everywhere he's been. He's 27-3 this year, his first year at Drake, and they're the top seed in their conference tournament. But the pressure on a team like that, when you play now in your conference tournament, where you're not going to get a second at-large bid for your conference, the pressure is extraordinary. And so you're right. Watching some of these conference tournaments, quarters, semis, finals this weekend before the big boys tee it up next week in the big power conferences is a lot of fun to watch. All right, what's the move? Casey, we begin with you.
What's the move? Miami baseball is the move for me. I'm going to be working all weekend out at Miami and Oxford and enjoying some baseball. I think Reed is going to be there with softball. So Chatterbox, we're all going to be down there at Miami. And in between those games, I'm probably going to be just working on the house, getting ready for baby McAllister to come in. We've been painting the nursery slowly. We've been buying things to put in the nursery, putting it together. And that's my move for the weekend. What about you guys?
Luke?
I said at the start of the show because I'm looking forward to it. My mom is coming to Bloomington. We have the game of the year, 3-way senior day for 3 Indiana homegrown kids on the basketball team. So Saturday is going to be a massive game. And as an Indiana student, you kind of ask for Assembly Hall to be jumping every night because it is a marquee location. But to have a game of the magnitude of Saturday, it's definitely the first time outside of a Purdue game, which I haven't been to yet, that you're like, this is why you come here and go to Indiana, because that is going to be a scene on Saturday to potentially play your way into the tournament. It's Mike Woodson's final home game, so that's really what I'm looking forward to. But mainly, my mom is coming in, so we'll get some good food. We'll hang out. We'll have a good weekend. Hopefully the weather's good.
I hope you guys have a great time, too. For me, this will be the 29th weekend of the last 30 weekends that I have been gone from home, and thank God for it. There's no complaining in there. between football season and basketball season. So this is my last weekend of college basketball for the year. I'm heading back down to Wake Forest to check out a team to keep an eye on in the ACC tournament is Georgia Tech. Damon Stoudemire, former great player. This team is rolling right now. And they play at Wake Forest, who basically have played its way out of an NCAA tournament bid. And so that's that. But Luke, most importantly, you made the big announcement. I mean, you're like a guy, you're like a big social media star. So you do things like this. You're able to. The rest of us, we leave it to somebody else. But you had a big announcement of your own yesterday. Would you care to share it with all of our friends in the chat here today?
Sure. I've been fortunate enough where I got a summer internship in the Cape Cod Baseball League to be a play-by-play broadcast intern, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm nervous, but it was officially yesterday, as I posted on my Twitter. I'm sure a lot of you guys know that just through Chatterbox and all the social media stuff we've done, but I appreciate everyone who sent a nice note. I can't wait. I'm ready to call, over 40 games this summer in a Cape Cod league that is widely known as one of the best leagues in the country, with all the college superstars going there and playing with wooden bats. So thanks for the shout out, Dad. I appreciate it. And I'm ready to get to work, but riding out the last couple weeks, or I guess 2 months left of the college semester before we head out to the Northeast. Somewhere
Well, buddy,
I've never even been.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool. And I'm just so excited of you, so proud of you, and I love you. I don't know a soul in that league. A lot of people think, his granddad, his dad. No, you sent your application in, didn't tell any of us about it. You've gone out and earned it with all the work that you've done. And so I'm really excited for you, nervous for you. But you got a lot of baseball and softball to do at Indiana before this season's over, right?
Yeah, I'm actually calling a double header of just a riveting weekend of the Hoosier Classic when it comes to softball on Sunday. So if you guys wake up and go to the 8 a.m. church service, if you turn on Big Ten Plus, I'll be doing a double header of some non-conference softball at Andy Moore Field. So that's one way to send my mom home, unless she wants to stay for, what would that be, 14 straight innings of collegiate softball. That's what I'll be doing on Sunday, but that's not my move necessarily. That is my experience or work, if you will.
Okay. All right. Well, Reed Mouse is correct. Devin Taylor is a dude. He's a big All-American, preseason All-American at Indiana, and that's fun stuff. Thanks for everybody. AJ, Mouse Cop, Reed Mouse. I miss Reed. I never get to see him anymore. I miss him. I was thinking about him this morning when I saw his Baden boys got beat in the basketball tournament last night. Julie, thank you. Lawrence, Everett, Spirit Cat, everybody who's been here, Optimistic John, Sean Connor, list goes on and on and on and on. Thank everybody for being here. Thank all of you for joining us. We'll come your way next Thursday, and man, we'll be right in the middle of all of the conference tournament action and can't wait to get it rolling. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.